Welcome to episode 14 of the Business of Real Estate podcast with Lynn, Hoffmann, and Eric Johnson. Today, we are joined by a special guest talking about what you want to be when you grow up as a real estate agent. Our guest has a varied experience in real estate, from everything from individual, team, residential, commercial, owning his own brokerage, being part of a franchise brokerage. So we are bringing a lot of information today to you on the Business of Real Estate podcast. Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 14. And Lynn, today we're joined by a special guest who's done a lot. And as you know, when you get into being a real estate agent, there's really a lot of avenues to go, isn't there?
Absolutely.
In your journey, what have you done? Like when you got in, what were your thoughts about where you wanted to go with your career?
That's an interesting question. So my journey is quite a bit different than our guest today, but I was in sales, started selling, and I did always want to be a manager. I did always want to got my broker's license right away as soon as I could, and wanted to do training and so forth. And I was encouraged at that time to take on some agents and do coaching and training for them before I became a broker manager, to sort of see how I would like that role. And I did that, and here I am, still 20 years later, doing the broker management side of things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, but there was other opportunities, of course, along the way.
Yeah.
And I guess the thing you just have to know is what you want to do yourself and how you want to handle that, and what the pros and cons are. And I guess that's what we're going to talk to Tony about today.
And we've had a lot of experience working with agents and helping them decide which way they wanted to go. And so the benefit for you, our listeners, is that we have with us today Tony Johal. And Tony and I met back in 2012. I walked into a BNI business networking chapter, and Tony was the residential real estate agent there at the time. He had been part of a team before that. He left and went into commercial with Cushman Wakefield, and then came back and started his own independent brokerage, and then became a franchise brokerage under RE/MAX, and has since gone back to being a team, a very successful team with another RE/MAX brokerage. So we want to welcome Tony Johal. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Tony.
Happy to be here.
Nice to meet you.
It's been an interesting journey, like watching you.
Yeah.
I remember when I think I was president at the time of the networking group, and you called and said, "Hey, Eric, like I'm going into commercial. It's more a 9 to 5 type of thing. I can't do the lunch meetings anymore." And then I just watched you grow and change, and it looks like it's been an interesting journey for you.
It has been. It's been, the funny thing is I feel like I've touched on so many aspects of this industry, and I did it all by the age of 32. Now that can be looked at as highly experienced or highly indecisive. But for me, I look at it as being a fruitful endeavor, and I believe it's kind of led us to where we are right now. So I can start at the beginning if you'd like. It's to me it's a little bit of it's been an emotional journey up and down, but I'm really, I wouldn't change anything.
So I'm just curious in terms of, because there's a few things I look at is, what's somebody's mindset going into it? What was their greatest achievement, or what did they feel they really accomplished? And then what was the decision making? Like what made you change, and what did you learn most from that experience? So let's talk about going from residential to commercial. So what was sort of the mindset there for you?
I started residential at 22 years old. And I think at 22 years old, from what I've discovered as being a team leader and hiring many people, especially younger agents, many of them are endeavoring on a career very early in their life. And by the time they hit 28, there's an element of maturity that they perhaps have gotten to in their career. And it's almost like they've been thrown into a career where many people in their lives at 22, 23, 24 years old are still trying to find their way. And if you're an agent starting at 22, by the time you hit 28, you feel like, what else is out there? And you start to get a little bit, I would say, frustrated, a little bit bored with various elements of deals not coming together. And, you know, I'm not ashamed to say this. When I was 28 years old, it's not like I was doing big numbers. I was, you know, $100,000 was a good year for me. But so the issue with that is when a deal goes sideways over a washer or dryer, you get very, very frustrated because it's one loss that, you know, that really, really kind of amounts to a lot. So, you know, I think it was just more and more of that just building up that just really kind of frustrated me to the point where I started exploring other avenues. And I did have a friend who I played soccer with. He worked for another commercial firm. And he had, to me, it looked from the outside looking in, he had it all kind of figured out. And it was only when I got into the commercial field out of frustration and maybe perhaps boredom with residential, getting into the commercial field, it was just an eye-opening experience for me. It was phenomenal, the experience. Not lucrative for me, but phenomenal in every other sense.
Yeah, that's quite a change. I have a lot of agents that express the same kind of frustration that you just suggested you had there.
Yeah.
In the beginning, they don't have a big database. They may not have a lot of life experiences. They're newer, they're younger, and you did very well to do $100,000 a year at that level of your career. But you're right, things can go sideways, quality control issues, other problems, contractual. They change their mind. They're not getting a divorce today.
Yeah.
They all go back. And so that nice, steady, stable-looking commercial business,
yes,
I could see where that would be the shiny squirrel that you wanted to run to.
Absolutely.
For the safe harbor.
Yeah, and you know, for me, looking back now, I would tell my younger self that I would probably just have taken a vacation instead of making this decision. And I would have made it a real vacation. I would have left my phone at home and I would have just picked up a cell phone in the Dominican, really just disconnected for a week, just to kind of prioritize, get my thoughts kind of right, versus making a decision based on burnout and perhaps emotion. I probably should have talked to somebody, which I did not do.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, take a vacation. The gentleman that hired me, right out of real estate, hired me. I had a very bad first 3 months, much like yourself. I had family members that placed their business elsewhere. I had all these things going on. I really needed the money, and everything was going sideways. And I was having a tough time with it. And that's exactly what he said to me. He said, before you do anything stupid, before you make a decision, take a vacation.
Yeah.
He said, you need to take a chill.
Yep.
And so sometimes that's good advice for everybody. Don't necessarily jump that quickly. Stop and think for a little bit first.
For sure.
And then decide where you want to go.
And let's be honest, you look at some of these commercial guys and, you know, it's a bigger price tag, right? So there's that bigger commission.
It's true.
And let's face it, it's not, but when you start getting into commercial, you find out, oh, wow, okay, these deals can take a lot longer. Forget hey, let's get a house listed. Maybe it sells within the first month or two and we close within another month. These can take a couple of years. Longer. Sometimes they don't come to fruition, and then it gets revived, and then they use the lawyers to complete the deal. You're kicked out.
Totally.
And during those 2-3 years, you're waiting on that commission check and going, how am I eating and paying my bills?
That's true. Right? It's true. And, you know, like I said before, it just wasn't a lucrative period in my life. And thankfully, my wife was doing well with TD Bank at the time. And she got us through that tough time. Mm-hmm. Now, I always look at that time not necessarily as a failure, because here's what I did learn about those commercial guys and gals. They're savages. They're up at, you know, they're up early. They're up at 5 in the morning. They're at their desk at 8 in the morning. They're dressed up. They're not coming to the office in sandals and shorts. And, you know, they have incredible standards. And I remember even my manager at the time, he had a clean shaven policy. You know, he was just one of these old school, like, you know, 120 years old, and, you know, like, but he was successful, and he had a pedigree of you know, bringing forth some of the most creditable commercial agents in Waterloo region that have done some of the biggest deals that we have ever seen out there. So I listened to him. So, you know, I thank my time in commercial for giving me that maturity, because I feel like I walked out of residential real estate into commercial. I felt like I walked into commercial like a boy, and I feel like I walked out like a man.
Do you feel it gave you the structure that you needed?
It gave me the discipline. It gave me the boot
discipline
in
and
the
structure,
it gave me
yeah.
the boot in the butt that I needed. Yeah,
I think
for sure.
I think that's really what the big win for that would be, because coming out of res, nobody's keeping you accountable for anything.
It's true.
But when you went with them, he had a
Yes.
standard and an accountability, and
Absolutely.
you had to change. So that's a really good point.
And I didn't recognize, when I got back into the residential side of things in 2014, I really wouldn't have recognized that little boy that left in 2012.
Very good.
It was a magical time.
That's good.
Not lucrative, like I said, but magical in every other
Well,
way.
education's expensive.
It is.
And that's an
Absolutely.
education, and you can't, sometimes that's the education you can't get from school or from schooling.
Yeah.
It's the school of hard knocks, and I've done the same kind of thing my whole life. So the education is expensive, but yet it's very, very solid and very good. Translates through your whole
Yeah,
life.
and as we were talking about just before we started was that idea of, and I mentioned how I used to have my clients journal wins and what I learned. So it's not a failure as long as you learn from it.
Absolutely.
Right? And that you've lived by that philosophy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in the moment, it doesn't feel great. But looking back, when you connect the dots, you're like, okay, you know what? Those are the little things that kind of made up who I am.
Yep.
Yep. So I really feel that was the catalyst for the trajectory that we were going to have over the next decade.
So what would you say to an agent that is, been doing residential for a while and considering commercial? So what would your best advice be?
I would do two things. Number one is I would look at the reasons why I am considering that, and I would jot them all down. I would write down the pros and the cons. And secondly, and perhaps most importantly, I wouldn't necessarily meet with a manager of a commercial firm. I would meet with one of the agents of the commercial firm. And I would ask them, what does your day look like? Tell me morning till night, what does it look like? What can I expect? Set the proper expectations before you get into that type of a venture. And I would also say, you know what, if you're a part of a big brand, like for example, Remax, for example, like where we are, I would say they have a commercial division. Maybe just without leaving the brand, maybe just segue into that side of things and really get a feel for it before you completely abandon the brand to go to one of these dedicated commercial firms. Because the biggest problem is this: many agents will leave, for example, residential to go into commercial, and then all of a sudden, the database that they've been cultivating for years starts to like come alive.
Yeah.
Their past client calls them to say, I want to sell. And under many of these commercial firms, you're prohibited to do residential. That's their standard, which we respect. So I did end up personally referring out a lot of business that I had cultivated from 2006 to 2012, 2013. Looking back, it was a lot of money that I ended up referring out when I really should have been transacting that myself.
Yeah. I think that's the other big pitfall.
Yeah.
Is that agents, especially newer ones, don't understand the length of time it's going to take for those things to start to bear fruit and come to fruition.
For sure.
It's just like the person that goes to the gym and they quit the gym just before that change is going to happen, or they quit something just before the change is coming. So you're exactly right. Just slow it down a bit, check all the avenues out, make sure it's the right way to jump.
Yeah.
Because you could be walking away from something that's just on the cusp of actually taking over.
For sure.
I loved what you said, and I think it's a great statement, what I'd tell my younger self.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to put it.
No, that's good. So you went from commercial and then you jumped back and you and your wife Heidi started your own little independent brokerage.
We did.
Really? So, and now I'm just curious because now our agents here in Ontario and Canada have the ability to create that personal real estate corporation.
Yes.
Whereas before you couldn't. So if you wanted to do things a little differently, you had to be a brokerage, either an independent or you became a sub-brokerage of a major. So your decision to create that brokerage, was that because you wanted that type of system, or you just thought, no, I can do this on my own?
Yeah, you know what? For me, the understanding the tax benefits came at a later point. It was more to do with just me choosing, at the time to leave Remax, who I love, to go to a commercial firm. And then for me to go back to Remax, I really felt transitionally it wasn't the place for me to go, just because I had initially left the brand, and I feel as if I'd picked up a lot of education with commercial. So initially, my vision was to have almost like a hybrid brokerage where I'm kind of doing both and specializing in both. It just so happened that, you know, life kind of pushed me more in the direction of residential when I had my independent. And, you know, you're right. You touched on one thing there about agents being able to have a corporation. So for years, when I had my independent, I had the tax benefits of having, you know, a corporation, and those tax benefits almost disappeared overnight when agents were able to incorporate. And I'm not talking sub-brokerage, I'm talking more like the personal real estate corp. Because all of the tax benefits that I had as an independent, I can now get with a big brand. And I didn't need a front desk anymore. I didn't need the rent space anymore. I didn't need Broker Wolf, and I didn't need FinTrack audits and RICO audits and inspections. So it just, for me, made financially a lot of sense, and I was saving a heck of a lot of money without the headache.
Because there's a lot more going into running a brokerage. All the trust accounts, like you said, audits, right?
Yep.
So for people who don't know, like, because we are in Ontario, we have RICO, who's the guy, you know, looking after, we call it RICO jail. They're making sure and checking up on when there's complaints, et cetera, but they're doing a lot of audits and the FinTrack, and there's a lot to keep track of. So, you know, for somebody who's thinking about getting into, you know, starting their own brokerage and not doing the personal, you know, corporation.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot to consider there. So what would you recommend to somebody looking to go that route?
I would definitely say speak with somebody that's already went down that path. Whether they've went down that path and returned to the big brokerage, or whether they've went down that path and are almost, you know, sentenced to that path to some extent. But, you know, I would say speak to somebody that's already been there before and really ask them these honest questions about whether it's the right thing to do, whether it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, if it's about an identity, then there's no reason why you can't have your own identity under your existing brokerage.
Right.
If it's about anything else, I don't know. Maybe it could be something from a bureaucratic level with the franchise. I don't know, but I would definitely speak to your broker owner about what options that you have before making a harsh decision, because starting an independent brokerage is not easy. No. You've got trust accounts, you've got commission trust accounts, you've got, you know, Broker Wolf, you've got Loan Wolf, and all these other things that are involved with you when you thought you were just going to be an agent. Yeah. It's like that person who is a really good baker, and they're like, I can do this on my own. And then they realize, they're like, hold on, I got to order the inventory, I got to find a space, I got to pay the bills.
Right.
Hold on, I'm not baking much.
That was going to be my next question to you. Of your day when you were doing that, when you became the owner of this franchise or of this brokerage, how much of your income was keeping it afloat as opposed to the other people that you hired keeping it afloat? In other words, were you still able to sell, which you love to do, or were you stuck doing all the management work?
Thankfully, Lynn, you know what? The management side, my wife is very, very astute at. She's very good at. She comes from an auditing background with the banking system, so she took care of that.
Okay.
That's really not my strong suit. For myself, yes, a lot of my income, a lot of my personal income was what kept this thing going.
Right.
You know, I approached this with almost like a double way to look at this. I'm going to be a broker owner, and I'm going to have my independent realtors there. And at the same time, I'm going to continue to have my sales team there. What I found was it was my sales team that continued to make the brokerage financially worthwhile. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really, I didn't get a whole lot from the independent side of the independent agents, simply because honestly, that just wasn't my focus. Mm-hmm. That was just something that I thought I wanted, and it was just, you know, when I got thrown into that, or not thrown, when I chose to walk down that path, I quickly realized perhaps that's not my direction that I enjoy. I grew up playing sports. Mm-hmm. I grew up athletic. And I grew up within teams. I grew up within that structure. Mm. It's naturally what I gravitated towards.
Okay. And you probably thought, I know a lot of people think, Lynn and I were talking about this morning, about people think, oh man, I can make money.
Yeah.
But when you look at some of the splits, that as a brokerage, I mean, you have the 95.5s, the 90.10s. It's expensive running a brokerage. And the margins, like if you're only taking 5-10%,
It's true.
and you only have 20 agents and they're not all producing,
It's true.
you have to sell,
That's right.
right? And what I say to people is, you're not making a lot of money owning a brokerage.
It's true, and whatever money you are making, you still get the biggest split afterwards, and that's with CRA. So I mean, it's you really have to make sure that what you're doing is financially going to be worthwhile down the road. Is there longevity in this? I remember a broker owner once told me when I got into real estate when I got into the broker world with the franchise. He said either go really big or go stay small.
Yes.
He said do not be in the middle.
Right, exactly. There's a death valley.
Yes.
And the number's around 30 to 50. And that's really a tough spot.
It is.
Very hard. Did you find you spent a lot of your day coaching your independent agents, helping them fix deals?
For sure. A lot of it went into coaching. A lot of it went into motivating.
Yes.
And that's what I soon realized is it's the thing that really kind of drained my battery the most.
Yes.
And
100%.
A lot of people say, well, you could have hired differently. You could have hired better agents. But I'll tell you this: there's not a single broker, owner, or manager out there that has not made a bad hire. And if you have not made a bad hire at this point, you just haven't done it long enough. The fact of the matter remains, the biggest sports teams in the world, their managers are paid millions of dollars to hire the right people, and sometimes they get it wrong.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, yes, you can surround yourself with the right people, but there's going to be some shedding involved.
But I'm going to say this, that even if you hire 100% the right people, even those right people, I mean, even some of my top agents, they still have bad months. They still have a bad year.
Yes.
Because their business is also changes throughout the year. Their clients change. So you can never get that part 100% right. But my question was, and you answered it very well, you spent a lot of time motivating, leading, coaching, helping. And I've usually found that those aren't necessarily the skills of a top salesperson.
Correct.
Top salespeople are really good at what they do because they're just naturally really good working with people and getting their points across, and they're very persuasive and they know how to bring people along.
For sure.
But they don't always know how to run the back end of a business, and they don't always know how to get that same result out of people.
Yep.
And I think that's where the old saying, you want to be brokers, so brokerages go broker and broker. And,
that's true.
it's kind of a thing. And especially when you're in that difficult zone. So your advice there was either really go big or stay really small.
Yeah.
That middle zone.
It was funny, as Lynn was saying that, I happened to look over, see your wife Heidi over there going, yep.
Yeah, you know what? She lived it. She's a trooper. When she got into the industry 10 years ago, she got into it not knowing anything about real estate.
That was probably just as well.
It was, and you know what? Thankfully so.
But sometimes.
I mean, a lot of this experience that I've been through, especially since 2014 onwards, I would say those have been the best years because of the things that I'd learned leading up to that point. She's learned them just along the path, the same as I have. You know, we're very different in how we think. I'm the communicator. I'm the salesperson. She's very operational and managerial minded, and we make a pretty good team. As long as we stay off each other's kind of court, we're pretty good.
And I think that's really good advice. In my first life, I call it, 24 years running an independent family business, and it was the same thing. It's like two halves of a key.
Yeah.
So one half isn't really as strong without the other half. So you really do need those two parts to make it work the best it can. And staying off each other's court is a really, really big thing as well. So you're very lucky if you can find that, because it's not typically your forte is not necessarily that other half.
Yeah, for sure.
As your other part, as your
And
partners.
we've done our best to try to kind of draw the lines in the sand. Even in our own office that we have, we've got a large office, 5,000 square feet, and we're 2,500 square feet apart. Just because we have very differing opinions on things, and it's important that the agents, at least on our team, understand where to go for certain questions because Heidi may respond to something slightly different than myself, and the agent then gets confused, and an overwhelmed agent or a confused agent really doesn't do anything at that point.
Right.
So the agent needs to understand the direction in which
Right.
they need to direct their question.
Yeah. You're hitting on some really, really strong points here, and you're understating them how important they are because there has to be one captain of the ship. There has to be one message to people. It's like raising a whole bunch of children. And if the children all think they can go to dad for an answer, they'll go to dad for the answer they want. They might not necessarily go to mom. So it's the same principle. And it takes an amazing amount of structure, just a lot of self-discipline in that and keeping that together. But you're raising some really good points.
I think just the fact that you had Heidi because you weren't going into this alone.
Yes.
Like there was a partnership there versus somebody trying to do it on their own. That you did have that, that support that okay, your strength is maybe her weakness and her strength is your weakness, and you do, like as Lynn said, the two halves of the key. But the fact that you had that support, because had you tried to go it alone, without that, right, there's that feeling at home like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
But you were both in it together, I think, which made it a lot easier for you than somebody trying to do it by
For
themselves,
sure,
right?
and there's that appreciation. When I mean appreciation, I mean that patience, because when you come home and, for example, if I've had a hard day, she understands why.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you've got a spouse that's not in this industry, they don't necessarily understand a deal going sideways and the amount of work that went into it and the amendments, the negotiations and, the bad inspections. And to them, and it's not out of ignorance, it's just simply because they're just not accustomed to our field. Somebody that's not in our industry may not understand what the consequences of a deal going sideways. Whereas, thankfully, having a spouse that's at least in alignment with the industry, she definitely understands, oh crap, you put in a lot of work there, and she knows, okay, give them his space, let them figure this out. And vice versa, when it came to when we had our independent brokerage and even when we had our Remax franchise, we, when it came to FinTrack and RICO audits, I knew to stay out of the house. I'm like, hey, this is not the place to be. Whereas if I wasn't in this industry, I couldn't understand the magnitude of the work that she was doing with the trust accounts and things like that.
So there, again, at the beginning, you said sort of tongue-in-cheek, the washer dryer. But most spouses, pick whichever side you want, but most spouses are used to somebody having a job. And the function of a job is you get paid every week or every 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah. There is a pay.
Yes.
This industry, there is no pay. There is no pay. And then the deal falls apart and you still owe somebody money, or there's a washer or dryer. And those really add to a lot of tension. So it's not for the faint of heart, this business, at all. No, it really isn't. And I do commend all our agents every day for what they go through and the work level that they go through. But it's so nice when you can have the support at home.
Absolutely. The funny thing is we live in a day and age right now where real estate is very much exposed online on these streaming shows and things like that. And, it's fiction because, if it was real life real estate, it wouldn't get any viewership because sometimes it is kind of boring. It's mundane, it's repetitive. I always tell my agents, it's almost like preparing them in advance or any potential new hire. The 80% of your day, your life as a realtor is probably going to be boring, repetitive, mundane. You could even say it sucks. But that 20% has to be worth it. Yeah. And I feel once that 20% really doesn't become worth it anymore, at that point, you're probably not cut out for this industry. For me, that 20% is so worth it. Even when my agent does a deal, I'm more happy when one of my agents do a deal. Of course, I am when I do a deal too, and it makes the whole build-up and the frustrations and so on so worth it. So it's just about, if you're a new agent in the industry and you're just looking at this, and I would say turn off the TV and actually, hook up with somebody that knows what they're doing in this industry, but be prepared for a tough go of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not selling sunset.
No, it's definitely not. Yeah, it's definitely not.
So what was your biggest takeaway from owning that independent brokerage?
It was learning how to stand on my own 2 feet. and not having a broker to lean on, and not having a manager to lean on, and having the decisions to make kind of fall on my shoulders, I feel as if it gave me the courage to be able to believe that I can do anything. And the one thing that I look back at that phase of my life, I feel as if coming out of commercial and having my independent, it gave me my mojo back. Mm-hmm. And it gave me a sense of appreciation of what it was that I walked away from, and really how to handle things a little bit better in the future.
Mm-hmm. And so walking away from that and realizing that, look, this is tough, man, like running your own brokerage and all these things. But then you jumped into becoming a RE/MAX brokerage.
Yes.
So what the hell were you thinking, man?
I've always had an affinity with the brand. I've enjoyed the brand. The brand's always been good to me. And that could have been anywhere. I could have been at any other brand, and I could have lined up with them for the rest of my career, but it just happened to be RE/MAX for me.
But why a brokerage?
Why the brokerage?
Because you just went through that, right?
Yes. So, I mean, for me, I thought it was going to be the elevation that I needed. And it certainly gave me the tools to be able to succeed at a higher level if I chose to go that broker manager type of route and build up a brokerage. And I feel as if I approached my brokerage with that type of vigor and passion that I have for my sales team, I really could have made this really something special. But I needed to be exposed to this and go through almost like the corporate element. I didn't know what I was missing as an independent brokerage until I went to a RE/MAX brokerage, and I started, or having the RE/MAX franchise, and then understanding all of the steps involved with how a corporate run brokerage kind of goes. So the lessons that I learned from there have been absolutely critical in how I've continued to structure my real estate sales team.
Okay. And so when we look at from an independent brokerage and also as a RE/MAX brokerage, that was a total of how many years?
That was a total of 7 years. Yep. So it was only maybe 18 months to maybe 2 years as an independent, and the remainder was as a RE/MAX broker owner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
And then you then said, okay, enough of the brokerage. Let's just go back to being a team within a RE/MAX brokerage.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I had a conversation with RE/MAX head office, and I said, look, the direction that you want your brokerage to go, I appreciate that and I respect that, but I think I'm more leaning towards this. And I know since then RE/MAX have made certain changes and how they're handling team offices and things like that. And I think it's a great way that they've continued to advance and open up the industry a little bit, because there is a big demand for team offices and team leaders that are in many cases outgrowing, offices.
Yeah.
So for myself, I chose to go the sales team route, and therefore, like I mentioned earlier, the costs involved with running an Indy were, and I still, even though it was a RE/MAX franchise, I still call it an Indy because it was just a singular office. So, the costs involved with that, to me, just outweighed the benefits that I was getting, and I would be getting them at a much better, cheaper cost without exposure elsewhere. And so that's really what determined it. And it took a good year to transition away from that, that type of brokerage to being a part of a brokerage and kind of doing the sales team within that brokerage. But it was also something that I think has made me better, tougher, stronger, faster. And there's nothing in this industry that I can't handle.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
No, it is. And would you say, because I know we've had agents come to us from different brokerages, and there is something like when you go to, like you said, you had this independent versus RE/MAX, it's a little bit different because everybody knows who RE/MAX is.
Yes.
I get agents that say, I have to spend 20, 30 minutes explaining who this brokerage is.
Yeah.
And us in the industry, if I started saying some of these names, you go, we all know them, but the public doesn't.
It's true.
So when they go, Tony Johal Real Estate,
yes.
Right? So RE/MAX would have made it a lot easier. They know RE/MAX, no problem.
It did. And I think the biggest benefit we immediately kind of felt was when we already had a large amount of marketing out there. So thankfully, before we transitioned to the RE/MAX, thankfully we already had a bit of a brand out there. People knew us. But once we kind of changed our color scheme to the red, white, and blue and incorporated the balloon into our O for sold, things like that, I just felt as if it just became easier. It just became a little bit easier. Now, whenever somebody sees, red, white, and blue on a large billboard in, Kitchener-Waterloo, they know it's me.
Yeah. I think that's the most important thing, and it's one of the things I believe RE/MAX Canada is going to start doing this fall, is really lean into the value of the RE/MAX brand on their agents' paperwork,
For
so
sure.
that they're part of that. And what it is about a RE/MAX agent that means the client is going to get a better care, a better level of service, and just have that strength of brand behind. So I think it's really important that they also weigh into giving that support. Has this been the number one complaint from people that have been with us and then have left us and then have come back to us, which is considerable numbers? They all say the same thing. It's just so much easier. Everybody knows who RE/MAX is.
Yeah.
The reputation's there, the standard is there. And so my goal would love to see RE/MAX Canada push forth the reason to the consumer, tell the consumer why they should have a RE/MAX agent in front of them.
Absolutely, and one of the agents, one of your agents here, good close personal friend of mine, number one in the country. He said it best. He said, when agents don't use the color, when they don't use the brand, and they're part of the brand, it amplifies his brand even more. It becomes less of a crowded sandbox. The other thing is too, sometimes for the large branded agents out there that are using the red, white, and blue and things like that, when another agent just randomly puts out, a bus ad, or, and the consumer may not pick up the agent's name or website, they just see red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
By default, their mind goes to that highly branded agent.
Right.
So there is a connection there.
Yeah.
So I do believe that, I do believe there's certainly symmetry in the success.
When you're going around a city or a town and people are driving through, they're going to look for all the signs.
Yes.
And when the signs are consistent and when the signs, all show that the RE/MAX brand, that's where those people are going to go when they go to buy a house in that new area that they're looking at. They'll go to that. So I'm a big fan of the brand and leaning into leaning into that brand.
And you've done very, because I lived in Kitchener-Waterloo for a number of years and I moved away, but I still go back to see family and I still see your stuff, and you've always branded yourself very well.
Yeah.
And now what I see is, you embraced the billboards.
Yes.
I know you've embraced coaching, so you're working with a coach, and but you've also embraced the social media, and especially sharing a lot of stuff. You're sharing parts of your meeting.
Yes.
Right, with your team. And so, that shift from a brokerage to just being a team, as you said, going from the independent to a RE/MAX, you had branding out there that allowed you to continue.
Yeah.
And then for you, I would think that the shift from being a brokerage to just being a team, probably a lot of people didn't even realize it because you're still RE/MAX.
Yes.
Right? And because I say to them, most people don't look at the little logo per se.
Yep.
They didn't say, oh, it's Tony Johal
Yes.
RE/MAX versus RE/MAX Twin City, who you're with now.
Yes.
They don't notice that, but they just continue to see the red, white, and blue. They continue to see Johal.
Yep.
That obviously made it a little bit easier, made it easy to transition. But when you look at that branding, continuing through and embracing the social media, what would you say to somebody like, what's the biggest thing you would recommend? Like, is it the billboards? Is it social media? Is it a combination of everything? Or is it just simply being consistent in delivering a message?
It's the number one thing is always going to be consistency. And the one thing that I have a lot of agents visiting my office wanting to I don't meet for coffee when agents want to come out and have a coffee. I don't go out for lunches and stuff like that. I invite them to my office because I just eat at my desk. And I would rather just talk to them in a work setting. But the number one question they always ask is, what piece of marketing should I be doing, or what piece of marketing should I enhance? My natural question to them is, how many deals have you done over the past year?
Right.
And give me a breakdown of where they came from.
Right.
And so they may say, well, 2 of them came from referral, 2 of them came from door knocking, 6 came from open houses. okay, well, what we need to do is we need to really dig into your open house system a little bit. We need to really kind of scale that, make it bigger, build a fence around it, and then to some degree maybe even automate it in the future.
Right.
So how many days are you doing open houses? What happens if we double that? What is your marketing involved with open houses? Are you just selecting high profile properties? Are you going door to door? Are you doing direct mail? Are you doing social media? What can we do to really kind of blow this thing up? And the other thing that I would do is I would speak to my broker manager and I would say, who within the RE/MAX network, and RE/MAX has a massive network, who within the RE/MAX network is absolutely killing it with open houses? And then what I would do is I would fly there, I would drive there, I would do what I got to do to meet with that person and just say, look, please share with me your open house system. Come back, implement it, scale it. And then once you kind of get to that point where you're getting diminishing returns or you're just getting stretched out, at that point you're going to find another part of your business is really starting to take off. Maybe it's internet lead generation. But I would definitely say when you're getting into the big branded marketing like billboards and radio and television, you've got to come in with a massive reserve. Because you've got to be prepared, not for a closing to happen for at least 12 months.
Yep.
And one billboard is not going to be able to do it. You've got to come out swinging with like 10, 15, and they've got to be in a highly concentrated area. So that way you're really kind of making the name there. You've got to be highly concentrated on the radio. You've got to highly be concentrated on a specific channel on TV, if that's the case there. But those are the things that require massive amounts of expenditure before you get any sort of results. Yeah.
And the other thing with that is you need to track those results.
Yeah.
I ask a lot of people, how much business did you get from that bus sign? How much did you get? I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. Then why are you spending? Well, if I don't, it's the fear of stop spending that keeps them spending, because they think if they stop spending on those things, that their business is going to go away. Yet they don't know how much business they got from it.
It's true.
So please, just everybody track that result.
Branded marketing is like, I call it the black hole, because what ends up happening is the minute you stop advertising, within a month, you're forgotten.
Yeah.
The other thing is too, you can spend yourself into eternity with that. So you have to be very strategic. So it has to be, in your branded marketing, are you directing people to a website? What website are you directing them to? Yeah. Can you dedicate that particular website back to a particular marketing source? If they're calling into the office, are your staff trained highly enough to be able to ask, how did you hear about us?
Yeah.
Oh, I see them everywhere. Can I ask what was the last thing you looked at that made you call us? Oh, we actually just went online. Okay, what took you online? Yeah. Oh, we hear ads on the radio, so we Google them.
Okay,
radio.
good.
Too many people would call that an internet lead. Mm-hmm. So you have to train your staff to really, really kind of get good with asking questions. And sometimes spending money on marketing isn't always the answer. Sometimes it's spending money on human resources. Because the last thing a lot of these teams need, when you've got 30, 40, 50,000 leads in your database, do you really need another 5,000, 10,000? No. What you probably need is a little bit of human resource in there. Either somebody going in, auditing your database, maybe perhaps a highly skilled lead manager, or maybe it is an agent. Maybe your agents are overflowed. So, you have to look at your business from a KPI perspective and say, okay, what really is going to be driving this forward? Is it human resource or is it marketing?
Yeah, those are all good points.
Mm-hmm. So now you've hit, and I think we're getting close on our time here, but I mean, you've done all this. So as I said, I call this episode, what do you want to be when you grow up as a realtor? Because there are a lot of avenues, but, as a team, I've seen you, like, even in your brokerages, you focus more on being more a team than that. So, I mean, it's taking you to the team. So what would be the biggest advice you give to somebody looking to start a team? Because there's a lot going into, like you said, that who do we bring in first? Admin, agents, what type of systems do we have? There's the financial side of things. What's the biggest piece of advice you could give to somebody starting a team?
I would say don't do it because it is... No, hold on. Let me finish. Let me finish that point.
I knew where you're going with this, man.
Yeah, don't do it because everybody else is doing it. Do it because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
The only time anybody should be starting up a team, to be perfectly honest, is when they have an overflow of business.
Thank you. Yes.
And you can't just hire based on you can't just hire based on the fact that you think bigger is better. It's not always bigger is better. You've got to hire based on an overflow of business. Too many agents out there are starting teams that they themselves wouldn't even join. Like, why would you do that? So, I mean, like, you've got to look at it from the perspective of, does this team have coaching? Do they have accountability? Do they have an overflow of business? What can I bring to this team to really kind of raise my profile within the team?
There it is, the value proposition of the team.
But-
Do you have one? We just talked about that the other day.
But no, what I like what Tony said there was, it's not so much with the team, because I always say to people, like, a lot of agents want to join a team. And even when we talk to people that want to join our brokerage, and if I get an agent that comes in and says, well, what are my splits and do I get any leads? And I'm like, I don't want this person.
Me too.
Because this is about what do you bring to us. Forget, like, yes, we have stuff to bring for you.
Yeah.
But what are you bringing to us? Because if you're not making my team better,
Yep.
why the hell would I bring you on?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep. If they come for the money, they leave for the money. That's what it comes down
That
to.
is a good saying.
So, for us, as long as we ask the agent, what are your expectations of us?
Yeah.
And then share with us, because I am going to share my expectations of you.
Yeah.
And, it's, we used to do disc tests and stuff like that. We found people were able to manipulate them.
I've never been able to do that. I wish I could.
So we've kind of went more down to the core human being type of thing.
Yeah.
What is it that's driving you? How many months of reserve do you have in this industry? Because I don't want you to kind of get to this point where you're ready to transact and all of a sudden you have to leave or pick up a part-time job because you're kind of running on E type of thing.
Yeah.
Do you have someone to support you in the meantime? Are you determined? Are you hungry? Why would I know that? What are some adversities you've overcame in your past life that you can look back and be proud on?
Yeah.
I want to know who this person is. I want to know that they're a fighter.
You need to know their heart.
Yes.
And just watching the Olympics jumping last night, so always interesting. That's the one thing you can never determine. How much heart the horse has, how much heart the rider has.
Yeah.
And we go through a lot of people. We meet a lot of people daily. And it's that one secret element you get better at understanding it. There are some people I know they can have a part-time job and they'll be really, really good at what they do because they've got a fire in their belly.
It's true.
And they want to go for it.
You know
and it's
what?
that heart.
It's true.
You can't read that in the disc profile.
No, you can't. And
can't.
It's talking about heart. We've got some wonderful agents on our team, some great guys. But the moms are absolutely savages.
Well, they are, and you know why. Do you know some of the first real estate businesses in Ontario, and I'm not going to name the brand, but was built around socialite moms.
Wow.
And a lot of my best agents at another corporate brokerage, they were moms. They were single moms who had either lost a husband, or divorced or whatever, and they had children to feed. Yeah. And they are savages because they have a purpose. Absolutely. And they have a need. I've seen some of my agents take the baby in the baby basket and go to the showings and go do what they do. They work really hard. I would never discount a single mother.
Strong why? They have a strong why.
They have a strong why. They have
Absolutely.
the strongest why. They need to provide a roof. And this is one of the only industries where a woman can earn the same money as a man.
Absolutely.
For the same amount of work put in.
I've got an agent on my team, Daniela. She's a sweetheart. She's on her third trimester, and she sold a home last night. She's out working constantly.
She's not sick.
No,
she's pregnant.
That's right, exactly.
And she's got a need to work.
Absolutely. And, she sets the bar for other people.
Yeah, good for
when
her.
I can say to one of the guys, look, you're getting outworked by a woman in her third trimester here, it's like that agent's either going to leave my team or they're going to dial it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But, she's an inspiration. And, not just her, I've got other great women on my team. And they just want to be good examples for their kids.
Yeah.
They want their kids to
And
look
to
at them and be
provide.
like my mom. I'm so proud of her.
That's nice.
That's when one of them share that at a team meeting, it just makes the whole day better. And of course, the guys on the team, we're very careful about who we hire. It's almost like a bro code type of thing. Like I feel like the bro code should be something that should be implemented into the business because it's all based on integrity.
Yes.
It's all based on values that you have amongst each other. And that's the only way a team is really going to function well. When you can trust your partner who's next to you, who's going to handle your business when you're away, and you don't have to worry about this person stealing your business or stealing a client. A team should be a safe space where somebody can talk about, hey, I've got a listing coming up at 123 Main Street, without having to look over their shoulder that somebody's going to take that lead.
Right.
That's a place that we've tried to build.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hard work, integrity,
Yep.
ethics, all important.
In this stuff you're talking about, it is. I use the example. I see it over and over and over. The analogy I use is, and what I see with different teams and team leaders is that it's the difference between finding a one-night stand versus a spouse. And because people understand it, it's kind of laughable, but we don't ask a lot of questions on a one-night stand. It's very quick, like, let's get into this.
It's transactional.
So what I see is somebody, transactional.
Transactional.
But they bring on somebody, they have one meeting, they ask you a few questions. Hey, join my team.
Yeah.
Versus when you're looking for that spouse, we're looking for, and you use the word partner, which I like. And so, I've had team leaders that then now it's called dating, right? So they're doing like 5 meetings with somebody before they say yes. Because they got to learn these things. Because anybody can come in like the disc, and a lot of people can manage that initial interview.
It's true.
Right? There's a lot of training out there. And so I can say the right things. And we've all had agents that come on, said all the right things, look the right part. And then they get here and it's like, what the hell? No heart, no work ethic. And so when you have multiple meetings and what I call dating, now I can find, are you the right fit? Because you brought up a lot of great points. And learning all of that in one meeting doesn't necessarily always happen.
No, it's
so
true.
we have to have multiple. That's, I know it's a kind of a silly analogy, but to me,
you're right.
it's the mindset of I got to date to find out if this is the right partner. Because I don't want a revolving door.
No,
if I have a team, I don't want a revolving door. I want somebody who's going to stay long term.
It's true. And I think by extending it like that, multiple interviews, you also learn that person. You don't just learn that person when you're face to face. You learn that person when they're not in front of you. Are they responding to your emails? What is their grammar like? Are they responding to things on time? If they say they're going to call you at a certain time, will they call? All of these things that are going on behind the scenes represent who this person really is. And for any team leader who's going to be bringing on a particular agent, keep in mind this agent is going to be a reflection of you.
Exactly. So I have a different name for it. I tell my team leads and my agents that want to join, I say, go live with them for a while. Just live with them for a while. Don't make it formal. Don't register it as that you're on the team. Just go live with them for a while and see how it works out. Because it's exactly in all those small things, those little tiny things, that you find out if that person or you are a good fit for each other.
Absolutely.
There's no way to find out
It's
except
true.
for doing some work together.
He left the toilet seat out, doesn't put away his socks. I get it. These are the things you're right. Your analogy is bang on, because
you go live with them for a while.
It's these little things, right, that can add up. Because when that agent, gets close to the team and live with the team, the team will tell you right away, hey, this person is rude, or this person keeps telling me he's going to be meeting me at a certain time, then he keeps canceling. These are all you're so right. 100%.
Very cool. Listen, Tony, we really appreciate your time here today. Thank you so much for coming out, man. It's been very enlightening. Anything you would, last words for any realtors out there? You've gone on quite the journey. Last words that you would give to people out there?
Alignment. I would say, align yourself with a company that is forward thinking. Too many agents choose companies based on the costs, and I don't think that is the way to go. I think you need to be part of a company, part of a forward-thinking company, because a forward-thinking company is hiring forward-thinking agents. That is the pedigree of people that you want to be amongst. The other thing that I would say is pick your mentors, pick your coaches very, very wisely. They are the only people that will enlighten you and open up your mind.
Awesome.
Excellent. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it, man.
My pleasure.
So for all of you out there, we thank you for joining us here this week on the Business of Real Estate. And we encourage you to follow us, subscribe. You'll find us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Samsung Music, iHeartRadio, just about every favorite channel out there for podcasts, and real soon coming to Apple Podcasts. So thank you again to Tony Johal of Remax Twin City. As usual, Lynn and I thank all of you, and we wish you guys an awesome week.